For those of you who don't know me, my name is Carol Cooper. I'm a professor here in the Honors College, a member of our Human Situation teaching team. And in our Human Situation course, we have the privilege of ending our course this semester by reading Václav Havel's famous essay, The Power of the Powerless. This reading was the occasion for inviting our guest speaker today, Dr. Martin Palouš, a friend, ally, and colleague of Václav Havel, to speak to us about Havel's legacy for our contemporary world. I'm very grateful to see so many of you in attendance beyond our Human Situation students. Of course, I'm very happy to see the Human Sit students here too. Let me say just a few words about our speaker. And Dr. Martin Palouš grew up in Soviet Czechoslovakia when he was 17. In his last year of high school, Czechoslovakia experienced a period of reform and liberalization known as the Prague Spring. And for a time, it looked like the world was opening up into a happier and freer place. But by August of that year, just as Dr. Palouš was beginning his university studies, the Prague Spring was crushed by an invasion and occupation by the militaries of several Warsaw Pact countries. And maybe some of you young students can imagine what it must have been like to try to complete your university studies under what I've heard him describe as a nightmare. And Dr. Palouš was involved in the resistance movements against this oppression, which is how he met Václav Havel. And despite all of this, he completed his studies and received his first PhD in chemistry in 1973. By the mid-1970s, Havel and Palouš and many others, including their mentor, philosopher Jan Patočka, had created and signed this document known as Charter 77, 1977, expressing their support for civic rights and human freedoms. This charter was both a document and a movement. Dr. Palouš served for a time as its spokesperson. And by this time, he was also continuing his studies into philosophy and the social sciences. By 1989, the work of the members of Charter 77 and later the Civic Forum came to fruition in what's now known as the Velvet Revolution, which managed to topple the Soviet regime in Czechoslovakia. Václav Havel, as you Human Sit students all know, was elected as the first post-Soviet Czech president, and Dr. Palouš had to interrupt his philosophy studies to become a member of parliament. Later, he became foreign minister, then ambassador to the United States, then ambassador to the UN. Somewhere along the way, he managed to earn a second PhD in international public law. In recent years, he's been teaching at Florida International University, writing many articles and books, serving as president of the Václav Havel Foundation in New York, and is also on the board of the Václav Havel Library in Prague, among many other activities he's undertaken to keep Havel's legacy alive. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Martin Palouš to the University of Houston.
Thank you, Carol, for this nice introduction. It's really my honor to be here at this College of Honor College of this beautiful university, and thank you for coming for this lecture. As Carol said, I've had intensive experience in communication with my American students at Florida International University. So when I want to invite them to the world of Václav Havel, I have to take into consideration their own perspective, their age, who they are, where they are coming from, and so on and so forth. So let me to start with the question, does name Václav Havel tell you anything? Okay, so one person here, but not so many. So what I know is that it's very important, instead of imposing on students my own ideas, experience, to invite them to be partners in communication, because my most important argument will be that Václav Havel can be a very interesting partner for you who are trying to answer your own questions and not just to study something what happened somewhere a long time ago. Let me, in that context, start with a little explanation of the title of my lecture. What's Václav Havel's legacy in the gap between past and future? gap between past and future, I borrowed that from Hannah Arendt, and her beautiful book. I certainly recommend your attention. Between Past and Future, 8 Exercises in Political Thought. And in introduction, she is really making beautiful arguments that are close to my heart, and I think that they might be interesting or close to your heart as well. She started by quoting from René Char. René Char was a French poet and participating in underground movements during the Second World War. And so he had to live in this specific atmosphere of uncertainty, being surrounded by all sorts of things and dangers. And then when it was over, he realized that a new system was being created after the war, that something was, I would say, not in harmony with his own soul, with his own spirit. And he said, notre héritage ne précède aucun testament. Our inheritance was left to us by no testament, as if he didn't know what to do with his own experience in the times of test and his resistance movement. And he wrote, if I survive during that time, I know that I shall have to break with the aroma of these essential years, silently reject, not repress my treasure. But Arendt said it happened. They lost their treasure, and she asked the question, what was this treasure about? It was to join resistance, and as he said, to go naked. Not naked in real things, but very vulnerable and open to all sorts of things that can happen to you without all these type of protections people under normal circumstances have. And Arendt tries to think about what this treasure means, and certainly there are all sorts of tales, stories about lost treasures. You can think about sword Excalibur in English mythology, and other tales of this kind. The treasure was never a reality, but a mirage that we deal. And question is, when we are now trying to understand our gap between past and the future, are not we bringing, and through me, here some sort of mirage into a reality that rather should be described by normal language of political science, international relations, international what have you. And Hannah Arendt interestingly brings in the whole American story. And the fact that in the depth of revolutionary experience of the United States are things that seem today a little bit outdated. Public happiness, public freedom, and something that is more important than success and glory. It has a lot of context ramifications, and again, the question is, are not we in the situation that our testament was not given us, and we need to go back to our own experience. And in that context, she tries to articulate that situation. What does it mean to be in the gap between past and the future? And she uses a beautiful parable, a short story of Franz Kafka. Do you know Franz Kafka? Franz Kafka was a very prestigious and famous author, born in Prague, the 20th century Jewish guy writing in German. And listen to this parable. This is exactly about the gap between the past and the future. He has two antagonists. The first presses him from behind, from the origin. The second blocks the road ahead. He gives battle to both. To be sure, the first supports him in his fight with the second, for he wants to push him forward, and in the same way the second supports him in his fight with the first, since he drives him back. But it is only theoretically so, for it is not only two antagonists who are there, but he himself as well, and who really knows his intentions. His dream thought is that sometime in an unguarded moment, and this would require a night darker than any night has ever been yet, he will jump out of the fighting line and be promoted on account of his experience in fighting to the position of umpire over his antagonists in their fight with each other. So what I'm suggesting to you, that not only me as an old man who has his own memories to be traced back Czechoslovakia during the time of communism and then transition to democracy in what was called the Velvet Revolution, but we all, including you now, live in a gap between the past and the future. And we need to find a way how to connect these two things. Past is never past. It's always somewhat present in our situation. But being in the gap between the past and future, I think puts us into certain alert if we are invited to the battle between conservatives and progressivists, between different schools of thought that do exist here and all over the world. And I will be trying to come up in the end, I'm still in the beginning of my talk, that the most important thing is we need to have some sort of philosophy of history that is compatible with our own understanding of ourselves and of the situation in it. Philosophy of history that is taking into consideration our concreteness and finiteness. We are all concrete, mortal human beings, born in a certain place somewhere, at a certain time. So our understanding is certainly very much influenced by that. That's why I don't want to impose on you anything, but just to have a conversation about the gap between the past and the future. And what kind of lessons we should take from there or learn from there. I think it is certainly that all of those who were telling us something about the end of history, not only Francis Fukuyama, who was maybe the first in this transition from the 20th to the 21st century, who came with this proposal, but all those who were inspired by German philosopher Havel, who believed that he can adopt a perspective to grasp the history as a whole, and not from someone who lives within that situation, who finds him herself in the gap between the past and the future. I will have to also say something about my Czech or Czechoslovak background. So we also have our problem with the ends of history and maybe failures of Czech politics that was connected with this type of misinterpretation. I will go to that moment later. Now, before I go to my hopefully successful efforts to introduce you Václav Havel, let me to give you a recommendation. I just bought, and on the way here, on the plane, I read this book. Have you heard about that? Technological Republic, Hard Power, Soft Power, and the Future of the West, Alexander Karp. Please check it out. It was published this year, so it's 2 months old. And I will read for you the last paragraph of the introductory chapter. The United States, since its founding, has always been a technological republic, one whose place in the world has been made possible and advanced by its capacity for innovation. But our present advantage cannot be taken for granted. It was a culture, one that cohered around a shared objective that won the last World War. And it will be a culture that wins or prevents the next one. The decline and fall of empires can be swift and have come in the past without forewarning. An unwinding of our skepticism of the American project will be necessary for us to move forward. We must bend the latest and most advanced form of artificial intelligence to our will, or risk allowing our adversaries to do, while we examine, debate, sometimes it seems endlessly, the extent and character of our divisions. Our central argument is, in the next era of advanced artificial intelligence, which provides our geopolitical opponents with the most compelling opportunity since the last World War to challenge our global standing, we should return to the tradition of close cooperation between the technology industry and the government? Or is that combination of a pursuit of innovation with the objectives of the nation that will not only advance our welfare, but safeguard the legitimacy of the democratic project itself? I'm perfectly aware that you might not be confused because what this is all about. We have now certain materialization of cooperation between IT companies and government in the cooperation with President Donald Trump and Elon Musk, his friend and advisor. I don't want to go here. I would like to look at the relationship between technology and government in Havelian sense. Within, obviously, government, in the end of the day, is government of people, and not of those who hold power offices in this right moment. It's very clear that artificial intelligence can be our greatest instrument, but also can enslave us very effectively if it goes too far and if it is not confronted or contrasted, if you want to say, with human nature, with human capacities. You know that better than I do. I'm an old man, but you all, I think, use artificial intelligence in your own way, and we can now discuss what's going to happen in the years to come. This guy, Karp, is certainly reminding the situation of discovery of atomic energy after the Second World War. You, I guess, saw film Oppenheimer when this was happening. And out of sudden, science was not just a science, but it turned out burst into the world of man and became a decisive factor in global matters. I am always trying to sell the idea of triangle. If we want to subscribe to science and be objectively accurate, and artificial intelligence is developed by scientists, we might believe that here we have a basic guideline, a basic instructor, what to do and what not to do. But it's a triangle. It's not just science, but also economy, what matters. Everything is costly and has some economic implications. And then there is a third element, and this is politics, the way how decisions are being made. Are they made in a pyramid from top down, or is local politics or politics of individuals important when we need to conform ourselves with what's coming from above? I will come again to Hannah Arendt in the discussion about totalitarianism. That is a historical lesson of the 20th century. But not only that. It is at this moment a discussion about our understanding our future. Artificial intelligence can create for us the world we certainly would not like to live in, being manipulated or being able to be smarter than all these machines that can manage now trillions of operations, and they will do more. And chatbots, bots, or how these things are named, so that we would be having a problem to make a distinction between human nature and artificial intelligent robots. So I think Hannah Arendt stresses one very dangerous mistake, and this is part of my triangle. What is law? Law in human society certainly is something what we should respect, but it is law in human society. It can be changed by due process of law. It is transformed into institutions, but these laws are very different from laws all totalitarians tried to play with. Laws of history, laws of nature. Hannah Arendt, when she was asked in the 1960s, how did she feel? She was a Jewish young academic in Germany. How did she feel when Hitler got into power in the early 1930s? Were you surprised what was happening? And she said, we are not so much surprised what our enemies did, because we know they had been saying that for some time before. We were surprised by what our friends did, how quickly they coordinated themselves with the situation. So she warns that the biggest danger to our freedom is our capacity for coordination. Certainly, I don't want to speak against, let's say, environmentalists, those who are, I would say, focused on climate change situation. But we need to put laws of nature that are in power here to a context of human world, human responsibility, what we can do actively, and not just to coordinate ourselves with that situation. You know, when it rains, you have three options: either stay at home, or take umbrella, or get wet. There is no third option. You have to get it. You have to take it. I don't want to object that, but in human world, in the world where human freedom is to be protected, we must be aware that human world certainly has different laws to recognize, and not just laws of nature or laws of history that goes to certain end, but Havel's message: whoever wants to start doing something, he or she has to start from him herself, and do it in a very concrete situation. We are not sitting on the top of power structures, but still it means that we all, you and me, have responsibility to do something together. And if there are wrong signals coming, we need to act on them. We should not be putting ourselves so easily to the position of those two in the parable of Franz Kafka, one pushing things forward, the other one blocking the road ahead. And we really need to have this dream to be put on umpire and being able to see ourselves in that situation, and then to cultivate our judgment and not just being pushed by some forces that are anonymous, and that way our responsibility doesn't have much to do here. So now I would like to go to Václav Havel, presuming that you are not very much knowledgeable who he was and where he was coming from. I am ready if you want it. We were always exposed to the pressures from the outside. If you travel, I don't know whether any one of you had an opportunity to visit Central Europe or Prague, you certainly would see a great historical city. It was a seat of emperor and mighty kings. Prague Charles University was founded in 1384, which means way before anything academic here was considered. And then we lost our independence. I don't want to go to 30 Years' War, which was very important in European history. And so modern Czechs is a nation that had to be reborn, rediscovered, and in the process of modernization. The Czech language was almost forgotten. Everybody spoke German in intellectual and urban circles. It was a language of emperor. And so one great Czech philosopher, Palouš, once said the Czechs were a nation of liberated servants. They didn't liberate themselves, but they were liberated by an act of emperor. And Czech national cause was certainly connected with language, with the rediscovery of Czech language and Czech literature and Czech culture. I will come to Slovakia in a moment. And by the way, think about that. What is a nation? In American case, it's almost automatically connected with some future-oriented project. It's not the past, it is the future what matters. Shining city on the hill, if you want to say, or anything like that. For us, I think origins is what matters. Language, fairy tales, interpretation of history, and your capability to find your place in a world around. Small nations, Czech nation is, let's say, small nation, are always somewhat dependent on world circumstances, whether they can hope for independence or being transformed into a client of a bigger patron, and so on and so forth. I will come up also to relationships, transatlantic relations, Czechs and Americans. I was ambassador in Washington, so I know that from my own experience. This relationship, by definition, was very asymmetrical. If you're in Washington, you know that you need to be creative to get ears in State Department to come up with something that is essential, that is interesting, that is mind-changing. And by the way, Václav Havel's legacy was one of the instruments that pretty well worked in the United States. When I see my Slovak colleague here, I have to tell you something interesting. When you see Czech and Slovak languages, are they two separate languages? Yes, they are. But was it this always that situation? I'm not sure. It was 1830s when there was a big discussion in Slovakia whether there is a one Slavonic language in Central Europe with two dialects. There was Urban and his school of thought that coined that thing. And on the other side, you had Svetozar Štúr and his people who believe that Slovak language is different, so that we have two separate languages. And But the proof is that a list of languages is not written somewhere in the mind of God who runs the history. It's an event that is being created and that has certain context and ramification. This thing has become a tremendously important political factor in relations between Czechs and Slovaks. So if you want to make a case for Czechs, who they are, what are their chances in the history, you need to be aware of these small details. Obviously, our biggest transformation was creation of an independent Czechoslovak state after the first Great War of 1914-1918. By the way, it was the first war in which United States of America became a European power. It was when President Woodrow Wilson decided to send troops in the last phase of the First World War and made a difference. And it was Woodrow Wilson who came with this proposal that the world needs to be made safe for democracy. And when all these institutions came into existence, League of Nations, ILO, International Labour Organization, there was a system of treaty protecting national minorities because there were new states, including Czechoslovakia, on the map. And then, interesting paradox, the United States never became a member of League of Nations because there was a resistance to it on the Senate, in the Foreign Relations Committee of U.S. Senate. And then American isolationism, that was a reality. Something that in the 19th century was almost just a matter of fact. We had a lot of people coming from the old continent to the new world, migrating, Irish and many others. But United States was United States. And isolationism, which means we want to be separated from all these ugly things happening in the outside world. I can also offer to your attention a piece, I just look at that now, that I wrote in 1997, published in Helsinki Monitor, the question for the United States in the 21st century. Can the United States in the 21st century still to believe in the ideas of isolationism? I don't think so. I don't want to speak too much about your or our, because I also have American passport, American president. He presents himself as an isolationist, but he cannot escape the fact that he must be globalist, because today, an artificial intelligence is certainly one of the movers, cannot be separated from the outside world. You can go to environment, climate change discussions, you can go to pandemics like COVID, and all these factors that makes us interdependent. So small and big states are very different. Traditions, languages, way of thinking, concept of nation. But we still have too many things in common, and that's why some sort of dialogue and finding unifying factors is extremely important. So I will tell you this in the second of my lectures on the Czech Republic given to American students. It's about communism in Czechoslovakia. This is a tragedy of my life. I was born in 1950, so it was the situation of the world I had to know. The question is how Czechoslovakia got to this situation after the Second World War. What was the decisive factor? Was it the Yalta Agreement between these three great players, Stalin, Roosevelt, Churchill, or was it our own mistake because we had a very powerful Communist Party after the war, and so on and so forth. But the fact is that we got to this situation, 1948, it was a coup d'etat, and the world, thanks also to atomic weapons and so-called mutually assisted destruction, was divided to east and west, at least in our part of the world. And so all people in Czechoslovakia had to take this fact into consideration. Some of them tried to emigrate. It's always a chance to do that. But all others had to stay. It had following effect for me. I saw one of my uncles when he got back from jail in 1960, because he was sentenced to 15 years in jail, and the best friend of my father, same thing, brother of my grandfather, and there were so many people who were affected by that Stalinistic past very much. It was the moment when communists believed in their radiant futures, and communism was defined by some sort of ideology, and building a better world, a new man, was very frequently used formula. 1960, situation changed. Czechoslovakia, Czech constitution was changed, and we got adjective socialist to the name of the state. And it looked like that the building of socialism advanced enough, so out of sudden Stalinism, Stalin was dead already in 1953, and Nikita Khrushchev got into power, and he disclosed all these horrors that happened in the Stalinistic era. So we were arriving to a somewhat better phase of our life. Golden 1960s, with all what it was. Václav Havel, by the way, became a famous playwright because he wrote a beautiful garden party play. I saw it when I was 14 years old, and it was really great. Other Czech artists, intellectuals, also got a new energy, new spirit. It was time when Beatles and Rolling Stones were very popular, and we were discovering all these tape recorders and things, and we believed that we might have a similar future as all freedom-loving young people, music, blue jeans, Coca-Cola, and whatever have you. And then I will also mention that 68 was already mentioned here. Hopes transformed into deep frustrations. Out of sudden, European politics smashed us, and we were reminded again that communism is our fate, that we either can leave the country or have to conform ourselves with that situation. So the question was there any third option? Let's say Havelian option. Can you live dignified life in harmony with yourself? Havel, I think it's also in the power of Powerless, you are going to read. You should not be having one set of ideas when you are in the safety of your bathroom. And when you go out to the streets, you know that you are in a different world, so you have to wave flags and use slogans. And if you do that right, you might have a relatively good life, which means not starving, dressed in a meaningful way, and so on and so forth. So most of people were doing that, and in that respect, our 70s and 80s were not, I would say, drastically bad, but they were bad existentially. And for many people, these Havelian questions, what can we do to resist that, were so actual that they were transformed into some activities in my case, I was attracted by philosophy. I knew that my scientific career, I had a doctorate in natural sciences, was over. I could not expect to get any meaningful job there, so I had to find something else. And consolation by philosophy, it is a discipline. Google it. There's a long tradition. It goes back to late Roman Empire. Boethius was a Roman politician. He was then beheaded because of resistance against the emperor. But he discovered, when he was in jail, the way how to communicate with muses and philosophy. So I think that many people, when they are put under external pressure, want to internalize that and find something that could make them strong enough and resistant. I know that you are good teachers here in philosophy, so you have all these examples from the Roman world and Greek world, how to isolate yourself from outside world that is corrupted. Charter 77 was mentioned here, but Charter 77 had, and it cannot be more and more emphasized, very important international context. This year, it will be the 50th anniversary of the final act of the Helsinki Conference. So please check it out, because Helsinki process is something, it's past, that can help us to understand ourselves with all these difficult questions we have, and including the Havelian legacy and perspectives. What was the Helsinki process all about? It was about creation of peaceful relations between states with different social and political systems. Final act defined 10 basic principles, including non-intervention into domestic matters of participating states. But the question that was behind was, what is the state? Is it something what those who in power have under their control, or is state citizens and us, who each of us has his or her own rights to do something about and to participate? This question was in the air. It was so-called third basket, or human dimension of Helsinki process, and Charter 77 was a direct connection to that. So again, the question is, are we only to be manipulated by the world, or are we ready to find some other motives? Very often, again, go back to history of philosophy, you can be inspired by Socratic example of Socrates, teacher of Plato, who was loud and explicit, saying, don't take very much power and glory, but about your soul. Try to live in unity with yourself. Between you go out and communicate with other people. So this internal perspective, movement of your soul, you can call it transcendence if you want, in which you want to live in communication with yourself, is an important inspirational element. But second thing is that if you do that, you don't do it alone. This was the basic and most important discovery of Charter 77. There were some other people doing the same thing, and solidarity with them might be the most important thing you can do in your life, being in unity with yourself. So this type of public space that was created by Charter 7 is very vulnerable. You have to be ready to spend some time in detention cells and being forced to be a manual laborer. But compensation was, in that respect, pretty significant. I'm saying that not just to speak about the past, but to speak about our state of mind, what we are ready to accept, and what is, I would say, matter of our responsibility. And it's a question for all of us what we want to do and what we want to sacrifice for doing that. Václav Havel had an interesting concept or definition of what hope is. Hope is not that things will turn well in the end. Hope is to do these things you consider right no matter what. That you want to do things because you are convinced that they should be done, and then it might have an even unpredictable political effect. So in my life, 1968, 1977, two connected years, and then the world going to the change, to the transformation of 1989. What was called Velvet Revolution, was it a revolution? It's a good question. We need to think about what are revolutions. And revolutions are not are discontinuities in time. Obviously, if you are a lawyer, so you can start thinking in precise legal terms. A revolution is a moment when you know that your tomorrow will be different from your yesterday. Hannah Arendt, in her great book on revolution, speaks about the conversation King Louis XVI had with Rochefort-Liancourt, his messenger. He came to Royal Palace reporting on the fall of Bastille and some appraisal on the streets of Paris. And King exclaimed, "C'est une révolte." It's revolt. And his messenger said, "Non, sir, c'est une révolution." Because there is a hell of distance between revolt, because revolt always ends and the things are brought back to the original state. Revolution is that your tomorrow will be different. There was a famous book published by Eric Hobsbawm in that period of time about short 20th century. Subtitle was Age of Extremes. Why short? Because this century in Europe started with the results of the Great War, of First World War, and ended up with fall of communism in 1989. So then what was presumed was some sort of transition. Transition to what? And here is then my third lecture I would like to turn your attention, which tries to follow the democracy in Czech, politics of transition. The return of post-totalitarians from their Babylonian captivity to Europe. We thought that our transition would be our transition to the world that was relatively stable. We wanted to borders out of southern were reopened. We could travel abroad, and we had plans to be like all other democracies around, and all things rule of law, private property, privatization, human rights, and so on and so forth. From the past, we had slightly different concepts of human rights, I have to tell, from the very beginning. I think that today it is very trendy to see human rights as entitlements, as something that we have more and more of some rights for this or that. We perceived Charter 77 rights as a duty to protect the rights of others, which is maybe, if we want to look at the documents or legal frameworks, not so much difference, but there is a difference in attitude and in the relationships. So back to democratization process. We started all these things, and we learned very quickly that our process of transformation was not taking place in a stable world. That the world started to be changed by the fact that we were changing, and that these changes had both regional contexts and global contexts as well. And we always had to think about that and put it into the right wave. What we experienced immediately was that after the period of unifications, the great victory of Helsinki process ideas, new charter for Paris Charter for New Europe in the fall of in November of 1990, out of sudden, we had a different world. We had fragmentations. Czechoslovakia, actually, paradox, the only country that was known as an island of democracy in the 1930s in Europe, was one of the first victims of the process in the name of democracy. Why? It is a Czech and Slovak question for sure, but I cannot go to details because I'm already speaking too long. But we had reunification of Germany, reunification of language, but then the Soviet Union disappeared, which had greatest political implications for geopolitical stability. Gorbachev's perestroika was, in that respect, thrown out. And we had Yugoslavia, the state that became a biggest victim of transition from the 20th to the 21st century. A rediscovery of nationalism, ethnic cleansing, Srebrenica's new conflicts. Out of sudden, we were invited into a very different world. So I will end by bringing in one more thing, which I think is very important. The Václav Havel's message sent in February of 1990, when he had the opportunity to address joint session of the United States Congress. I want to tell you, I was the one who was responsible for preparing this trip, so I had a very direct experience with that. And let me to quote a couple of things from Havel, and I strongly recommend it to your attention. It is important. I have not come here to speak about myself or my feelings, or merely to talk about my own country. I have used this small example of something I know well to illustrate something general and important. We are living in extraordinary times. The human face of the world is changing so rapidly that none of the familiar political speedometers are adequate. We are also living in the times when nothing can be taken granted, and artificial intelligence, I think, is one of the vehicles of that. And he said, we playwrights, we have to cram a whole human life or an entire historical era into a 2-hour play, can scarcely understand this rapidity ourselves. For those who have interest in classical things, the question is what playwrights are all about. Playwrights and philosophers. Playwrights know for sure that knowledge is not knowledge of something that is above us, some eternal ideas, Platonic sense. Knowledge is experience transformed into knowledge. Knowledge is suffering that you have to experience by being part of a certain situation. Again, Havel, thanks to the great support of your President Wilson, our first President Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk was able to found a modern independent state. He founded it, as you know, on the same principles on which the United States of America have been founded, as Masaryk's manuscripts held by Library of Congress testify. That's true, but at the same time, this asymmetry and the difference of history and difference in the concept of what is nation, past or the future, we have to be very qualified. And then all of this, our experience in the 20th century, taught us to see the world in bipolar terms as two enormous forces, one a defender of freedom, the other source of nightmares. Europe became the point of friction between these two powers, and thus it turned into an enormous single arsenal divided into two parts. So I think that we have to be cautious not to go to this or that ideological positive or negative description of this world. And now the Soviet Union, totalitarian system in the Soviet Union and in most of its satellites is breaking down. So the question is, what can we do? Certainly each on his or her level of responsibility experience. How about someone who said here later, I like this, so to find it. Give me a second. He said that I have never attended any school for presidents. Actually, I was still detained. I was in the same situation in October of that year, 1989. So the idea that 2 months later I will be representing the state was very bizarre. So you can take this for granted from someone who is not a real expert as a president, but someone who comes with his own experience and responsibility and strength and identity. I often hear the question, how can the Soviet Union, States of America help us today? My reply is paradoxical, as the whole of my life has been. You can help us most, and listen, if you help the Soviet Union on its irreversible but immensely complicated road to democracy. It is far more complicated than the road open to its former European satellites. I think that still this is valid today. Soviet Union is not Soviet Union, it's a Russian Federation. But even question, is there something like a Russian path to democracy thinkable? Or is Russian tradition too much tied to imperial traditions, orthodoxy that doesn't subscribe to separation of authority, spiritual authority and secular imperial power, and so on and so forth. And he said that, and this is actually, I think, the most important part of his message. And here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, I've only been president for 2 months, and I haven't attended any school for presidents. My only school was life itself. Therefore, I don't want to burden you any longer with my political thoughts, but instead I move to an area that is more familiar to me, that I would call the philosophical aspects of these changes that still concern everyone, although they are taking place in our corner of the world. And then, very important message. The communist type of totalitarian system has left both our nations, Czechs and Slovaks, as it has all the nations of the Soviet Union and the other countries the Soviet Union subjugated in its time, a legacy of countless death, an infinite spectrum of human suffering, profound economic decline, and above all enormous human humiliation. It has brought us horrors that fortunately you have not known. At the same time, however, unintentionally, of course, it has given us something positive, a special capacity to look from time to time somewhat further than someone who has not undergone this bitter experience. A person who cannot move and live a normal life because he's pinned under a boulder has more time to think about his hopes than someone who is not trapped in this way. What I'm trying to say is this: we must all learn many things from you, from how to educate our offspring, how to elect our representatives, all the way how to organize our economic life so that it will lead to prosperity and not poverty. But it doesn't have to be merely assistance from the well-educated, powerful, and the wealthy to someone who has nothing to offer in return. We too can offer something to you. Our experience and the knowledge that has come out of it. This is a subject for books, many of which have already been written, and many of which have yet to be written. I shall therefore limit myself to a single idea. The specific experience I'm talking about has given me one great certainty. Consciousness precedes being, and not the other way around, as Marxists claim. For this reason, the salvation of this human world lies nowhere else than in the human heart, in human power to reflect, in human humbleness, and in human responsibility. You can think that this is just nice talk. Every priest does that on Sunday meetings. But I think that it is serious. But we can also criticize ourselves. Have we already been able to articulate our experience and transform that into knowledge? Or were we too much focused on our westernization, democratization, that we have not done that in the right manner? I think that there is still task to be done, that still this responsibility is with all of us. So I think that, I need to end, I will. And I wanted still to go back to my beginning, to this book I've offered to you. What does it have in common? I think that obviously we need to be able to behave responsibly and react to things that are around us. Artificial intelligence is a very serious thing. And we all need to fight with totalitarian tendencies or temptations, inclinations, and not to coordinate ourselves. It's not a matter of being progressivist or conservative. I think that we need to be able to communicate, to have a dialogue, to communicate with each other and not to close ourselves in bubbles. It's so easy but it certainly doesn't help much. It doesn't bring thinking to action. It is sloganeering and something that is dangerous. I think that you know what I'm talking about, and in spite that I'm old and you are young, that I'm in the end and you are in the beginning, we still have something to do, because the gap between the past and the future is here, and if we don't build bridges, then gap will turn out into abyss. Okay, thank you.